Welcome into another episode of Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports. Hit up the website, clockersports.com. And, of course, the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Man, the Rona, boy, I swear, it's making it a lot harder than it should be for us to not really put together the show, but just really to get through the days, because, man, no live sports is tough. We just got done with the final episodes of The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary showcasing their final run at a championship, and everybody's already clamoring for more. Everybody's already clamoring for more, myself included, but I think what we can all take away from that is, there are a few lessons we can all take away from that, but we're getting to that in a second. The first thing I want to talk about is actually that the league could possibly be returning to play. I talked about the top 5 to 7 guys in the league getting on a phone call and kind of expressing how they would like to return to play. We know the owners want to return. The owner of the Rockets, Tillman Fertitta, actually talked to the president today and was talking about the NBA's plan to return, and they're trying to determine whether or not to have every team come back, if they want to have just the playoff teams. Adam Silver is trying to push for every team to come back so that they can get to the 70-game threshold to meet their television contract obligations and recoup some of their losses. It's a long, complicated process, and that's before they even get to figuring out about actually playing any type of games and what that would look like. As we know, LeBron James has been very vocal about wanting to resume the season, and the conventional wisdom is he and obviously the guys directly behind him in the rankings want the season to return. It's going to be mighty hard for the other guys to kind of stay away from doing so. But again, everybody's kind of quoting that with the dash of, but health is number one thing. So we'll see where it goes. But there's a lot of growing optimism that the NBA could possibly be returning to play, which I think would be a welcome sign for anybody. Even if it's just the casual person or even somebody who's not even interested in sports, just as a sign of return to normalcy in any way, shape, or form at this point, with all that's going on with the COVID-19 and everything like that. So that was the one thing that caught me off guard. I had to leave with that. I know The Last Dance has been a central part, and if you've been following me, I've been talking about it on AM 560 the past few weeks, and I'll be doing so again tomorrow, or by the time this airs the same day. I'll be doing so again on Tuesday. When you actually think about what we watched in The Last Dance, right? There were a few things to take away. First of all, RIP to Gus Lett and John Wozniacki, the Mike security guards, Shrug Guy, and then the Gus Lett, the security guard who kind of assumed the role of Mike's father figure. We learned early on that Mike was not necessarily the friendliest guy off the court with any of the guys on the team, but he got along with the security guards, and those two made quite an impact on everybody watching the documentary, as well as they did, obviously, in Mike's life. But aside from that, there were some basketball-related things. Mike was the petty king, and I'm talking about petty. George Karl walked past him in a restaurant, and he took it personal and went out and tried to bust people. He petty king. I don't think I've seen anybody who takes everything as personal as Mike did, and it's actually become a running joke in one of the sports groups that I'm in. We talk about it all the time. I said, Mike was just like, man, my mom forgot to cut the crust off my sandwich. I'm about to go bust Clyde ass. Like, it's crazy how much he got mad at being compared to Clyde, who was largely viewed as the second best player in the NBA. That's incredible determination to prove that you are the best, because I mean, it's not a slight at all, but man, I'm talking about the best part was him saying, this is a couple episodes ago, but him saying, that that Clyde was a threat, but being compared to him was still not, that wasn't sitting real with him. Now, these past couple of episodes, we got to see the Jazz and the Supersonics. The Supersonic series was one of the first that I actually got to remember, and watching them was kind of bittersweet again, because it was a reminder of how good they actually were, and then watching the Bulls be a different version in the second three-peat than the first one. Now, I talked before about how the first time I was kind of young, so I didn't really remember it, but the second time I have a vivid memory of how tactical the Bulls were and everything that they did. And I think, first of all, beating the Jazz the way that they did, the Jazz were old, but the Bulls were also old, and they played a whole lot of basketball by that point in time. So that's kind of a wash at that point in time. Like, seriously, we talk about how advanced those guys were, and they were, Malone and Stockton, but the Bulls were also, and obviously by judging by the fact that they broke them up right after that, and we'll get to that in a second. But the second championship run was so much more about having been there and done that than the first one. The first one was kind of about the sheer, like, they dominated both times, right? But the first run was like athletic prime stuff, right? So I mean, it kind of showed in the way that they played, and I think it was a much more lethal combination with Horace Grant instead of Dennis Rodman. Don't get me wrong, Rodman obviously one of the greatest defenders of all time and rebound king, but Horace Grant was able to do some things down low offensively that Dennis just never could. And I wonder if, because at the end of the episodes, we saw Mike kind of hear what Jerry Reinsdorf had to say about the breakup and why things got broken up. Long story short, they just weren't. It wasn't going to happen because they tried to get it, and Phil wasn't coming back, and it's in the third. Mike kind of shrugged it off. He was upset. He's pissed off. He felt like they didn't get a good chance. He said they should have gotten a chance to be beaten before they give up the crown. And I don't necessarily know if they would have gotten that. See, so first of all, I don't think they would have won 8 straight. I'd like to have thought that for the longest time, but watching this documentary and watching how much of a strain it took on them to get to the first 3, maybe they get to 4, but I don't know if they win a 5th one in a row, right? And then you damn sure ain't winning another 3 after that. So I'm not sure about that ever winning 8. Now, as far as getting to 7, it's true that Phil said he wasn't coming back at the end. I would imagine, but when you look at Scotty, who I think if anybody was going to be the monkey wrench and things not necessarily coming back, it would have been Scotty. I've been a vocal critic of his, and the producers kind of let it be known that it would be his episode to show his toughness. I'm not sure that it really did enough for what we saw previously for him, and he's been upset supposedly about how it's portrayed him. But I mean, truth hurts, I would say, because a lot of this stuff is what people know, but to see it in film is what makes it such a visceral reaction to it. But I think Phil was burnt out on all the circus of it all, and getting that 82-0 was kind of his way to put his whole energy into it. I think Phil was burnt out of that. So, but on top of that, if anybody player was going to do it, it would have been Scotty. Because I think you could have coaxed Phil into getting one more if Mike said he was coming back and everything, the band was going to get back together. Phil might have been able to squeeze one more out of him. He'd already broken his rule. Go for the even 10. You got to be able to find some kind of zen with 10, right? You have to, even if it's just a rhyme. But Scotty would have bounced. I think Scotty would have bounced for the bigger contract. And I believe Krause said so. Reinsdorf says so. They think that, or Reinsdorf definitely says so. He thinks that Scotty would have taken a larger contract from Houston. They ended up working out a sign and trade, but I Scotty would have gone because he felt like now I say that while leaving myself the out of Scotty being the perpetual wingman that he is. I could honestly see Mike saying, "Man, get your ass over here. We'll get one more run," and they go and do one more. So that's entirely possible too. But I just don't know if I don't see them winning 8 straight. Bottom line, don't see them winning 8 straight. And 7 is quite questionable to me because at that point, you got to replace a lot. The cap space has been talked about. It's tough. Do I think they should have gotten a chance though? Yes. Am I kind of glad that they didn't? Yeah, because it kind of adds to the lore of it all. But, you kind of wish that they would have gotten another shot to try to run it back one more time just to see if it was at all possible for them to really just give the fans, you go until you can't win anymore, I guess is the old adage. But at a time where they really elevated the NBA to a whole nother level, it was kind of an appropriate way for it to end, because they got to have the celebrity, the rise, and they didn't really have that fall that you see of a lot of dynasties, right? They had the Showtime Lakers fell, the Bird Celtics fell, the Bad Boy Pistons fell. We've seen a lot of dynasties fall apart. The Spurs, if you want to consider them a dynasty, I don't know. How do you do the Lakers? You get the idea, though. This Warriors dynasty, we see how they fall apart. The Bulls didn't really have that. They got taken apart, but they didn't go out with a loss. So that kind of adds to it as well, and it kind of strengthens their case as one of the better teams in the history. It's a very, very interesting documentary overall. And I think the one person that the most misunderstood, I'm not sure if my opinion on him changed, but I kind of understand him a little bit more, and that is Jerry Krause. And for all the ire that he gets, he does deserve more praise, and I think that's what he was trying to get. I think that's what he wanted. All he wanted was a pat on the back, but he ensured that he would never get it. He did everything in his power to make sure that he would never get the pat on the back that he rightly deserved. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen in my life, and people want to blame it simply on short man syndrome, and that's cool. You can do all that if you want to, but you got to riddle me the fact that, like, okay, he's like, you still have to go out there and make these moves knowing that it can be detrimental to the long-term health of your organization, right? Like, we talked about at the beginning, Reinsdorf said that he knew that Krause had a history of alienating people. Well, if that's the case, why do you hire him in the first place, right? But if he knows it, I'm sure Krause has had to have been told at least a couple times. Like, somebody had to say, hey, man, you kind of abrasive. Just a guess. Now, moving on to the current Bulls. I mean, I just think that Reinsdorf, or Krause, wanted the pat in the back, but he made sure that he would never get it. Need more. Not a lot of the complaints that are coming out about it now are just because people aren't getting the personal story that they wanted to hear. I do think it's kind of like reliving it the 90s, though. Feel like the cool kid because my team is the one that's out here killing and everybody else is trying to get a piece of it. That's what I think about all the people who have so many negative things to share about the documentary and how it's been going so far. They just, get mad. You mad. Big mad. I love it. It's great. Again, it's been a long time. Which brings me to the current Chicago Bulls, and a player that I think they should be having their eye on is Big 12, Iowa State, Tyrese Halliburton, point guard. Now, I shared the story. I wrote an article for Pippen Ain't Easy, and I said that he would be a bullseye target for Chicago. Now, I posted this, and people just kind of went off telling me about all the Marcus Fizer and hiring Fred Hoiberg and how Iowa State just is no good for the Bulls. And I'm like, look, you can't let poor decisions in the past affect what could be a solid player for you. And in writing the article, clearly I think Halliburton could be that player. Now, that being said, he has had the team is not that great. Their one-loss total isn't good. But I think his skill set is such that it complements what the Bulls are looking for and what they really, really need if they're trying to do anything with the roster that they have. Now, this is only assuming that they keep the guys around that they already have, because we can't assume anything else at this point. Now, we can start making some hypotheticals and things like that, but where they are in the draft, where they are in the lottery, right now, and who they have, I think he fits well. Now, the big thing that stood out to me is that he has a 35% assist percentage, right? He averaged 6.5 assists. He led the Big 12. He was top 10 in the NCAA in assists, and he would have been led the Big 12 in assists. He was good for top 10 in the NCAA and would have led the Bulls by a full assist. His 35.3 assist percentage would have tied him with Devontae Graham for 10th in the NBA. Now, that might not necessarily, he won't have those numbers. I would doubt he'd have those numbers quite as strong as he did in college. But I think he has the tools to come in and be a better point guard than Kobe White off the rip. There's a lot of speculation from before the draft of what Kobe White's ultimate fit was, and he does have some more playmaking chops than I think a lot of people want to give him credit for. But I also think that the Bulls severely lacked, well, I know for a fact they severely lacked a lot of, they lacked passing. They need a point guard who's going to be able to not only facilitate, but not be a liability on the offensive side. They got a lot of play out of, they got a lot of burn out of Tomas Satoransky, but they weren't able to generate much offense with him because he's kind of shot averse. I mean, there was times when he would be at the rim and would look to pass because he just did not feel comfortable finding a shot. But Chicago also ranked in the bottom third in assists, so it didn't really help them at all. Now, you get a guy like Tyrese Halliburton in there. You still have the Kobe White, who can just get hot from any moment, but you also have Zach LaVine, who's still a threat but doesn't have to have the ball in his hands and make those kind of decisions. Where you do worry about Halliburton is his slight frame, but he's a rookie. He would be, you're going to get him in the NBA weight room and try to add something to his frame. I think he's a poor man's Lonzo Ball with a little bit better of a stroke already. He makes smart plays. He's got good vision. I just think that's a good fit. We'll have to examine some other players, but I just don't see why, if the Bulls are sitting where they are, there's not many other players that are going to come in and be able to contribute with the lineup that they have. You're not going to lose Otto Porter, right? You're not going to lose. You assume that you're not moving any of the young core at this point. I would think that you're going to try to move Thad and Tomas Satoransky, and you kind of replace them with some younger guys. And this is a guy who come in and kind of fill that role while also being able to be your point guard of the future. I just don't know if that's where Kobe White's future is. As much as I like what he can do, his combo abilities, I think he's still best as an off guard just because of what he can do in that capacity. So we'll see how that goes as far as that. Going to take a quick break, and when I come back, we're going to talk about the NFL. And, man, players and owners alike are out here just doing the absolute most, so who knows what's going to happen with that. We're also going to talk about the Chicago Bears in a teaser for an article that's going to be coming out for Clocker Sports. Stay tuned. 000, be right back. Don't go anywhere. Now on 000, and that story from Pippin Ain't Easy. Go ahead again on Pippin Ain't Easy, check that out. But back now on 000, I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at Josh G Buck, Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website is clockersports.com, email clockersports@gmail.com. The NFL's offseason has hit a dead spot as far as league activities. The draft is over, free agency's been gone. And we're just waiting for hopefully an official start to the season and really anything to go on, because, like I said, it's just the no man's land in the NFL world. Well, in that vein, players and owners alike are out here just doing the absolute most. First of all, the players are out here just absolutely wild, and you've had 5 players arrested in the past week: Ed Oliver, Cody Latimer, DeAndre Baker, and Quentin Dunbar. Those 2 were together. And Earl Thomas, who wasn't arrested, but definitely didn't have the best time of his life. Now, each one of these guys is separate situations. I don't want to comment too much on ongoing legal matters. Earl Thomas's wife was out here pulling guns on him because he was out here with his brother doing the most. We'll leave it at that. They were doing the absolute most. DeAndre Baker and Quentin Dunbar are accused of sticking up a poker game that they had lost, or to get a Rolex back, something wild. Apparently, the witnesses announcing that they've lied. Who knows? Cody Latimer, wild at the poker game. There might be some sexual assault with his child involved in that. Ed Oliver caught DUI and with a loaded gun, but those are misdemeanors, so he actually has the least charges out of anybody here. Well, I guess Earl Thomas would have the least charges out of least charges out of anybody because he's not being charged. But just the absolute get football back, okay? Because free time is hurting everybody right now. I'm not saying that these guys wouldn't have done this if the season were going on, but damn, okay, wow. And as if that's not bad enough, the NFL owners decided to get in on the madness and make some amendments to the Rooney Rule and some extra rule changes to try to what they call incentivize the hiring of minority coaches and executives. Now, we'll start with that part first. The incentivization was they were going to offer the ability to move up a few spots in the 3rd round if teams were to hire a minority GM, and then in the 6th round, something like that, if they were to move up for the coaches. Basically, they were trying to get them. They were bribing them. Okay, it's a bribery. Hire a minority coach, and we'll get you a couple of spots higher in the draft. Now, you can the best intentions, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I'm not going to speak on what people were intending to do, but what it is a bribe, and it's a horrible one because nobody's asking for a handout in this situation. This is literally a matter of of an opportunity. And so that brings you to the Rooney Rule, where they're saying now teams have to hire or have to interview 2 coaches of color, and then an executive for of minority for their front office role. Now, the problem here is if the Rooney Rule wasn't working before, what is doubling down on is supposed to do? This is a pipeline issue. This is an issue that goes into some dynamics of on the field and what happens in player transitions, I think. And it's not going to be settled by any type of rules like that, and you're definitely not going to do it by bribery. This was a very poorly thought out plan, and if this was something that was developed under the umbrella of the NFL and Jay-Z's agreement, it's terrible. And it's a bad look, and I mean like it's a bad look, fam. Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you didn't get what you think you earned, or being made to feel like you didn't get what you think you earned because somebody else is. You've given somebody else a reason to question it. That's as clear as it can be. It's a bad idea. Both of the rules out there are bad. Again, you need to stop switching quarterbacks because you don't think that you can teach them how to be accurate, but you want to teach a guy who's a pocket passer how to be accurate. That's never made any sense to me at all. If you can throw strong, but you can't run, they will work with you to work on that accuracy. But if you can run, they want to switch your positions. Well, why not work on his accuracy? I've never, ever understood that. You want to fix a big coaching problem if you do that. If you keep guys at quarterback, they will have a lot easier time transitioning into a coaching rank because, let's face it, a lot of the best coaches are coming from the quarterback position, quarterback and offensive line. I think another issue is it has to start from younger age. You got to get them going at the lower level, of becoming offensive coordinators. And hopefully, I think we're seeing a little bit more influx in that regard. Hopefully we'll see that reach the NFL. But these artificial types of methods aren't going to ever solve anything, especially when the problem is so deep rooted that you felt the need to not only double down on one rule, but add an entirely different rule that's actually a bribe disguised as helping anybody. Again, it's an affront to people who are putting in a lot of hours to make it, and it's not a way that you want to go about solving your problem. So that's my 2 cents on that. Speaking of Roonies, though, the Pittsburgh Steelers will be having Big Ben back this year. He shared a video to his Instagram of him working out, throwing to receivers, including Juju Smith-Schuster. But the important thing about it is he shaved. Yep, not that he threw. The important part is that he shaved. Why? Because it means he's healthy. Now, again, it means that he threw, so you could have probably guessed that because if you recall, when he first injured his elbow, which caused him to miss most of last season, he said he wouldn't shave again until he was back throwing. Well, he shaved and was on video throwing to receivers, and which at the end Juju Smith-Schuster simply said he's back. Now, if he is, the Steelers are still a long way from where they were when it was the Triple B, the big 3B Killer Bees. What did I call them? Triple Bs. They're a long way away from when they were the Killer Bees, and there was even some talk a little while ago about Juju not returning. Now, I would imagine that he comes out and plays inspired because of that. And with Big Ben back, he could have a monster year, and they probably end up getting him that deal. But this season, and Ben's still older. Like, this season has all the chances. This season has all the earmarks of just going awry because they're just not planning it very well. Now, there's rumors that not only were they talking about not re-signing Juju Smith-Schuster, but also James Conner. You understand that a little bit more because he is a running back, but still, it's something that's kind of surprising ahead of the season with a veteran quarterback returning. If I could speak, with a veteran quarterback returning, you would expect them to kind of keep those types of things close to the vest, and we'll see how it all plays out on the field because, yeah, you're playing with fire with letting these guys know that they might not be back. I would expect that the Steelers are expecting that to light a fire under the players, but we'll see how it ultimately turns out for them because, again, that's not something that you kind of want to just be teasing and throwing out there. Hey, yeah, y'all not coming back next year, so we just talked about Jerry Krause souring the room, telling them before the season that would be their final one, so I can't really sit here and double talk you and tell you that I think it would be cool for for anybody in the NFL to say the same thing to their player. So that's the message that I'm getting from them. They'll say they're not resigning. So whatever. Bringing it in though, because I got to wrap up with some Chicago stuff. And what will be a part of a two-part series, breaking down the best and the worst off seasons from the 2020 off season, 5 and 5. Starting off with the 5 worst, and yes, my Chicago Bears made 5 worst off seasons. Now, in a vacuum, the moves themselves aren't bad, but it's how they came about, and it's the price paid that I think ultimately will prove to be a problem. Giving up compensation, draft capital compensation for Nick Foles was a problem when he ultimately would have been released. Now, granted, you play in the game of him going somewhere else, but still, it's not worth the 4th round pick when you had limited capital to begin with. You didn't have a 1st round pick, so that was a problem. Robert Quinn was a solid move. We'll see if it works because you're giving up some run defense that they raved so much about with Leonard Floyd to bring in what should be some pass rush. So hopefully he can maintain that. Not too many complaints there, despite it being a bigger deal than I think I would have liked. You also spent money on Jimmy Graham for some reason, and then you drafted a tight end. You could have spent that money better. I feel like they kind of are half-cocked in this, right? It's almost they're going forward, but they're restrained because there's not much faith that they can get it done. And that's where the problem for me is. Nick Foles has an out after this year, but I think it's only he can trigger it, so we'll see how maybe they can work their way into that. I'm not sure the final detail on that exactly, but I know that he can trigger the out. They didn't really address another receiver. They got Darnell Mooney late in the draft, but that's another project. We saw what happened with Riley Ridley last year. And Anthony Miller is his is mostly health related, but he's had some trouble being consistent early in his career. So who knows? Cole Kmet, the first pick of the draft, their 2nd rounder, but their first pick of the draft, has received a lot of mixed reviews. They're excited about him. A lot of people are, but there's a lot of detractors too, rightly so, because as a rookie tight end, he's not going to give you a lot. So it's kind of a pick that is viewed as somewhat of a luxury, especially when combined with the signing of Jimmy Graham. But I like it. Jalen Johnson is supposed to be the steal, but again, if they'd have gone with a corner or even a safety, they could have doubled down in the secondary and had a really good draft, and kind of came back for tight end because he was the only tight end that went in that round. So it wouldn't have been. It was he's the only one who went immediately in that area. It was an okay draft. It could have been a lot better, and I think that again, what made their offseason one of the worst, and they're number 5, so they're not the worst, but they're bottom 5. You'll have to read the article, plug, to actually find out who the rest of the teams are. But they make the list because they overpaid for Foles, they possibly overpaid for Robert Quinn, and they made really bad decisions at tight end or questionable ones at tight end. And they signed Tashawn Gibson to be the strong safety. Eddie Jackson. We'll see how that works out. He's been solid everywhere he's gone. We'll see if it makes if he can find that happy medium between what Adrian Amos was bringing and what HaHa kind of gave you last year. A little bit more playmaking, but we definitely need some more thump in the box. If that works out, then maybe they'll be okay. But it's just a tough one for a team that fell off from 12-4 to 8-8. They feels like they peaked in 2018, and they're struggling to find who they are now. Matt Nagy was recently on the record in Sports Mockery talking about how he feels like Mitch Trubisky could still be an Alex Smith type player, and that might have been the most deflating thing that I heard or read the entire day, because when the coach is acknowledging or saying that he thinks that the player can reach that possibly, and the player that he's talking about that his player ascending to is, and with all due respect, but a mediocre player in Alex Smith, what are you even doing? People will point to Smith's 4 Pro Bowls, and I will point to Mitch's making the Pro Bowl. Like, Pro Bowl is not gonna convince me that it's a good that you're a great player. I'm sorry. So that was depressing to hear that coming out of Matt Nagy, and hear that he thinks that Mitch can possibly get there. And I said this is not something new. I've been saying this for quite a while now, that when Mitch was coming out and they were saying he's the, they like to compare him to Alex Smith. I said, well, that's an issue, because not only is Smith not great, but he wasn't even so good. Like, he was okay